But yeah, we are now officially live. Welcome everybody back to IndieWebCamp New Haven. We had a slight change in the schedule. We're about 15, 20 minutes back, but I reflected the change on the wiki. And we are here at our next session to talk about books. And this session will be facilitated by Chris Aldrich, who is, author representative, author extraordinaire himself. So I guess I'll hand it off to you.
Well, mostly I thought we could just sit and brainstorm because there are the books page on the wiki has a handful of examples, but then the other half of the page is people who have their libraries online and who have, hey, these are the books I own, and they're showing those on pages. So just I think throwing out ideas of either places online that are publishing things, that are selling books, that are, even Gutenberg, one of the original web projects, I don't think is listed on there, and they probably are showing and displaying more books, or even, Google Books isn't on that page as an example. And then there are pieces of editing software that allow people to write their books online and live. And then there are other places where people are displaying their books online so they can be read, or that can be downloaded and put onto Kindles and other mobile devices. So I think even if we do nothing but kind of brainstorm and collect some of those ideas of where those things are, so that we can then look at some UI ideas and come up with better ways of owning a book as a, I guess ideally the thing is, if you were an author and you wanted to write your entire book online, show it on your own website, and or potentially sell it on your website, which can be a whole nother ball of wax. But what do those things look like? What's out there already? What exists?
I want to get those three things down that you just said. So it was goals, an author's goals. So we have two different audiences. I see you down below me before me, writing your editing software. So it was displaying books read, displaying collections of books. Then you said authors publishing books. Authors marketing books, and then authors selling books. Did I get your main point?
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just a brainstorming. And you did a ton of work already on this, on the wiki pages. All right. So what did you tell? Just give us a general overview. Like, are there a ton of publishing tools out there for owning your own books?
Well, the tough part is, how do you want to do it, and can you guarantee what you're writing is saved? Mm-hmm. So ideally, the thing I would probably do is go to GitHub, so I could version everything and go back to chapters or pieces.
But as I will say, as somebody writing a multi-author book, which probably doesn't happen except when you're in the academic space, GitHub's a really crappy place for versioning books.
Yeah. Or, well, you could version the documents and then how you edit it or what you edited in. So I might like writing in plain text using something like LaTeX, and then I can at least version everything and push it to GitHub so I've got copies of it backed up. But the issue is, what happens if you're writing on something like WordPress and you're halfway through a chapter and then suddenly something goes wrong or wonky or sideways, and then you lose a half an hour, an hour's worth of writing. So there's the old adage of don't edit in your
CMS.
In your CMS, or don't write in your CMS.
And Okay, keep going.
So it's how do you do that and not lose?
What happened to me, and it's a book that Jack and I are working on, is I have no problem writing in my text editor. Sublime has decent spell check. I started writing in just HTML, but everybody just kept saying, "Can we just do this in Google Docs? Can we just?" And they're right. I mean, it is the best. To me, it is still top-notch collaborative writing tool out there. Hey, Rose, is that Rose?
Yep. Yes.
Hey, nice to see you, Rose. So to me, like my other co-authors wanted to write in Google Docs first. So what I find myself doing is going from Google Docs, then I export to HTML, and it has so much inline styling, and then I throw it into HTML tidy, pull out all of the and then pull out of all the all of the styling that Google Docs puts in, and then I can throw my HTML page up. But because like I said, I'm using Jeremy Keith's book as my kind of template.
Yeah.
Just because I just know it works because he did it.
Well, yeah, and it's gonna it's gonna look pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And if I assign this book, like I'm legally liable if it's not 100% accessible.
Yeah.
I like sue me for lots of money liable. So I have to know that if I'm going to assign a book in my class that I wrote, it has to be 100% on point with accessibility.
Yeah.
Which has me learning about a lot more about accessibility, which is a good thing. But so, Rosemary, do you want to just say hello since this is your first time popping in for the weekend?
Hi, yeah, I'm Rose, and I wrote a book last year, yeah, so I might be able to contribute to this.
Well, now, where did you put? What was it called?
It's called Build Your OmniFocus Workflow. It's available at omnifocusbook.com, but you have to buy it. There is a free sample, but I had a co-author as well, and we wrote in Scrivener because we managed to use that to compile EPUBs and PDFs, and even a Mobi format, which is available on the Kindle, and the Kindle is happy with that. Amazon is even happy with that, which, oh boy, that was fun. So that theoretically makes it accessible because at the very least it does have like read over voiceover ability. So,
and we'll be using an open source not an open source, a publisher that allows you to publish open source. I'm going to mess up the pronunciation. Athabasca Press in Canada. But for us, so we'll still have a published book, but they allow an open license and allow us to do with whatever we want with it online.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
Yeah. If they they still have to accept the book. We have a tentative deal, but A, we have to finish it, and then B, the editors have to approve it. But I think we only have like a chapter left. So we'll get there, and we can show some examples later. But I totally forgot about Scrivener as a book editing tool. And we should make sure we add that, Chris, to the wiki.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of editors out there for doing some of that stuff. I think the tougher part of the workflow is there's so many pieces of the publishing puzzle and so many locations. So you have physical books, you have digital books, you have 15 flavors of digital books between EPUB and Mobi and PDF and 57 other document formats that are out there. So it's the bigger issue is how do you build something that is not only accessible, but then also accessible and distributable in all of those formats in an easy, simple way. I know there's a handful of platforms we should write down. It's kind of like iTunes for books, but it's called Calibre eBooks.
Calibra, yeah.
Or
that's
Calibre,
really good.
depending on which continent you're on. Usually I say Calibre, which is odd. I was talking to somebody in the US about it yesterday, and they called it Calibre. And I was like,
recognizing the Libre word is free. Okay.
Well, but Libre is also
Library.
Libra is the word for book in Latin, I think Greek as well. But so it's that piece. And there's another one called Sigil, Sigil, I think, or Sigil, that you can use to convert books and formats as well, which is not a bad thing. And if I recall correctly, that one, the editing interface for most of that stuff is in, has CSS baked into it. So in some sense, it's a web first setup. And I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know there's a W3C group that's working on the EPUB 3 or maybe now EPUB 4 spec. And essentially they were setting it up so that you could get closer to publishing it once online or having a version that's in HTML and CSS so that it would work online, but it would also work so that when you publish that in an EPUB format, it's essentially the same thing. It just, your e-reader, your mobile reader is picking up the same exact same thing and using the same structure.
And book is technically a German Dutch word for beach, and that was for the runes that used to be carved. So the word book goes all the way back to carved runes. And now I'm looking up the etymology of libre, but ultimately, you set me off on a geeky word hunt.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is I want to publish my book in HTML, and it'll have a print style sheet for those. Because I'd say 50% of all my students will print out. I can give them, if I assign a 400-page PDF, there's still half of the class is still going to want to print it. I'll do the book in HTML with a print style sheet, and then a podcast for every chapter, which will be the audiobook, and it'll all live in the domain of the book. That's kind of, Jack, what I'm thinking. It actually works pretty well, the style sheet now, when you print it out.
Are you planning on doing just like one HTML for the whole thing, or are you planning on chaptering it and then sectioning it within the chapters and everything?
It's one chapter, one chapter per page. So I'll pop in a link here and then on the wiki. So I'll pop it over here in our Google and the Hangout chat. Now, these pages this is very early draft form, and I stopped updating it because not Jack per much, but our other co-author really wanted us to edit it. And it does. I mean, it saves a lot more time co-editing in Google Docs than it does in, like, trying to be like, oh, I filed a PR for chapter 2. Did anybody look at it? And then they're like, okay, you changed something in these 4 lines, but I don't know exactly what, because I only get line by line changes, not character by character changes. And you want to, like, it's just, I mean, it's more efficient to co-edit. I tried being like, well, we could do Etherpads, just trying to, like, can we do 100% open? And I think it got down to be like, we can be open enough. Like, yeah, we're still using a silo, but we're still sharing out the links everywhere. We're still saying comment. You can take the chapters if you want. So we're on Google, which is a silo, but we're still, I feel like, kind of openish enough till we get done. And once every chapter is done, I'll move them over. So let me share my screen.
Well, you could even take that kind of stuff and dump it into GitHub or, version it once a day, even if you're not getting everything.
Yeah.
And honestly, if this isn't the forever home for that information, does it matter if it's a silo that much? I mean, obviously it's great to use open source stuff, but it's a temporary solution to get the book done. Exactly. And I'm always of the opinion, use the right tool for the job, and then you can do whatever it is you want with the result. But until you've got the result, you can't do anything with it. So.
And Rose, that's exactly what happened. We were like, I set up Scalar. Like, you can go to longforms.jgardner, and like, I was like, I'd write something like, ooh, I should be able to do this in Scalar. I'm like, ooh, there's a plugin for that. And then I just spent 3 hours installing plugins and not writing a book.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the bigger problem with the larger space is there isn't a one place catch-all, do everything from soup to nuts in a dry fashion, so that you're not repeating yourself. So there's, a place to write and edit, and then there's another place to publish online. And, you could publish it and do it in HTML and simple CSS. And we can do that now. But then how do you do the editing? Or ideally, how would you do the editing in one place, publish it in another, and then spit out versions for the 70 different formats for every other reader on the planet in a simple, easy way? And that's, ideally, I think that's the goal at the end of the day. And, we're years from being able to do that. Or how do you even, if you're doing it from an open educational resources perspective, where things you're putting out are all Creative Commons, how do you make it easy to cut and paste and excerpt pieces from a digital book so that you can cut and paste them from one book and put them into another textbook or educational resource somewhere else, so that the people you're sharing that data with aren't trying to reinvent the entire wheel as well. But that to me, that's the big hard problem, because there's individual tools all along the chain that do bits and pieces of these.
Do you think the world needs just one more book writing season?
Well, I don't even know that we necessarily need something that does everything from soup to nuts.
Yeah.
But even having a kind of a master list of the pieces of the puzzle along the way to help anybody who wants to do that stuff to know, here's, the 57 most commonly used editors and the outputs that they give, so that if you want to put it on your website and give it away for free, this is the quickest, easiest way to do it, so that you're not tinkering around and doing what you did, is looking at, you spend 2 weeks looking at 7 different platforms, and that's half the book you could have written, or maybe a quarter.
Yeah. Or this book, I've had this contract with the publisher for, I don't know, a year and a half. So I'm a little late. But that's because Jack just keeps giving me all these great ideas. And like, you know what? I got to redo that whole chapter. If I redo the whole chapter, I need to, that changes the whole book.
I only came on at the last minute, so you can blame me for like a month, a couple months.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was Jack was working on another academic article with me, and that article ended up becoming a chapter. So I'm like, you know what? You've already written half the theoretical section, then you might as well just co-author this book with me. I'm not going to make any money on it anyways.
We're not. Oh, okay.
No.
I kid.
$10.
I believe much like the music scene, the book, like the money's made on the road, not on the sales. The speaking gigs, it's your book, like that's why I think a lot of people, when you look at the margins, and and Chris can tell you more, like publishers provide you zero service now. Like they charge you, they literally charge you for everything they used to do for you, whether that's the editing, the marketing. They'll tell you, you can only have 2 images. It's like, it is so ridiculously constrained how much of the business model publishers have pushed off onto authors, while they complain about authors self-publishing at the same time. So it's
well, even in the academic samizdat space, most academics are publishing stuff and putting it into their journals where it's siloed away and somebody has to pay for it. And it's more of the world is tending to move towards making it all open, but almost nobody is actively going out and saying, I'm going to put this on my own website first and publish it here. And then, so most people are going to preprint servers, which is kind of a medium form of another silo.
Yeah.
Which isn't it's not a bad way to create discovery. And sometime in the next year or so, I want to build a preprint server that works the way IndieWeb News or IndieWeb.xyz works, where you can publish it on your own website, syndicate it by web mention to a web mention preprint server so that it's out there and people can discover it. And then based on how you tag it or categorize it on your website, it can be tagged and categorized that same way on a preprint server that does that type of functionality. To me, that would be the holy grail of academic publishing.
And I mean, you can do that now. I mean, all the plumbing's there. I'm thinking about IndieWeb News or IndieWeb.xyz too. Is like I could set up. This is the tag for my book. This is the tag for chapter 1, and I could literally just syndicate chapter to chapter, and then there's a book there that's done. I wonder what about is archive.org, do they handle text file? I mean, obviously they handle HTML and web pages, but
they've got books. We can all add that to the list of examples.
Good idea.
Because they've got a huge number of, especially older books.
Oh yeah, books by languages. American libraries they have them organized by library. They have a this just in section. If I want to upload, what are my choices? I get upload files, but it doesn't tell me much about uploading a book or what I need to do, or how to do that,
or what formats, or
yeah. But I mean, they're also not supposed. They're supposed to be an archive, and I'm kind of like I'm hosting things there, so it's not But I think our Internet Archive's changing a little bit, but I do my donation, so I feel like I'm giving back a little bit. So yeah, it just lists all the books. It goes under the metadata of just texts, but then when you click on a community text, they have metadata to qualify it as a book. Hey, what's up? You get some right here?
Yeah, no, I'm going to show one.
Fine.
Do you want me to take any of this?
No, I'll clear all that up.
Okay. All right. Have fun.
We will.
All right.
There's another thing too that I've been thinking about lately too, is if somebody's got a free online or even an OER textbook and I want to print a simple, cheap copy.
Oh.
One of the easiest ways to be so let's say I'm a student and I hate reading online.
Which is
I'd rather have the print copy. I can go to the local Kinko's and for 10 or 20 cents a page, spend a huge amount. But if there is an easy way for me to plug it into a bunch of quick printing services, or even like Amazon. So let's say I took Jeremy Keith's online book, which is essentially Creative Commons enough that I could throw it up on. I could, personally, I could spend an hour and massage that into a format that would put out ebooks or EPUBs.
Well, you actually don't have to. It already is there.
And I think he's got some stuff like that too. But if I wanted to print copies, I could throw it up and give it away for free that way, or not give it away for free.
How about just using something like CreateSpace though, because then you can get like a properly formatted with a cover and everything book that is printed on demand.
So there's that as kind of a simple turnkey solution, but I actually have tools at my disposal that do what that does, but do it for less money and give me more flexibility for how much it actually costs to physically print the thing out and ship it and send it. But then there's the issue of, okay, I have to charge some nominal amount at least for the printing and shipping
and for the time.
And maybe I give my time away because I want to support Jeremy Keith's work. But obviously there are going to be some people who are like, yeah, for $25 an hour for the, couple hours it takes me to do this. There are other ways to do that.
And looking at his website, so I'm on his Resilient Web Design book. And he has it so you can start reading it now with or without an internet connection because he has circus workers in it, of course. Or you can download it in the PDF in portrait mode, PDF in landscape mode, an EPUB, a Mobi version, or each chapter as an MP3 file, all on the one website, which is super cool. But that's when you've been building websites for 30 years, probably a little bit easier for you to do. But it's actually his template's not that bad. I think I'm going to keep using it.
But even doing that is a huge amount of work if you're an author in self-publishing. Knowing where all those things are and how to use them becomes a much bigger hurdle. Because even though the publishing industry is fragmenting itself off and the big 5 publishers are losing ground to the self-publishing business, essentially all those people who were doing individual things working at the big publishing houses who are being laid off are then going out and hanging up shingles to say, hey, I'm an editor. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm a book publicist. Hey, I do the typesetting. I do, the physical printing. I do, whatever those pieces are. It hasn't disintegrated enough to that next layer that as an author, you can easily do all that stuff without doing a tremendous amount of research to educate yourself on how to do all those individual moving pieces. But if you're going to have a successful book, if you're writing, to do that as a living, that's a whole nother layer of work that if you spend all the time learning and doing that stuff, then you have no time to keep writing the next book. So
And-
it's
And we were talking about, and that's just self-publishing. When we were talking to, we were joined by someone, Francette, who's building an author profile page, or author platform, Chris called it. So she'll be back tomorrow at Hack. She's building her very first website. Has never been online for her book tomorrow. And one of the things that we were talking about was the demand of your having a large social media presence. I know all of a sudden, as soon as I hit 5,000 people on LinkedIn, that's when publishers started contacting me and being like, "Oh, now you've like that seemed to be some kind of magical threshold of we don't." Oh, especially if it was really a O'Reilly Media, like they wanted to see a minimum 5K on LinkedIn before they even looked at you as a possible author. It's almost like they want you to come with a built-in audience now versus having to market to an audience.
Well, there's that, and that's a useful thing. And Hollywood has been doing that too, even with small and medium-sized actors, is how big is your Twitter or social media following? But it's so easy to fake that or buy fake followers. Or I think Hollywood has realized that's a losing proposition, and the value of that is so exceedingly low that we don't care about it anymore. They're starting to care less, because it's too easy to fake. In fact, Kevin Marks posted a great thing from Mike Caulfield the other day about identifying a fake journalist, and how easy it is to fake these things now that it's just not worth the value. So the bigger thing is, what's the value of the actual idea and the value of the actual content? And really, if you're a smart publisher, you're focusing more on that. You may save yourself a little bit of time and effort in the publicity side if they have a pre-built platform and set of followers who are actually real.
Yeah, strength of network versus network size almost.
But being able to value and vet a network, particularly in corporate social media, is there just aren't tools for that really, for figuring out who are all the fake followers, so that oh, this person has the 10 people in their family are their real followers, and guess what? The author's either going to buy them a book or give them cheap free copies. So, the usual rule of thumb is the vast majority of books that are published don't sell over 200 copies, 250 tops. And if you can get to, so 10,000 right now is bestseller. If you can sell 10,000 copies of a book, you're on the bestseller list. And that's, to me, that, if you know that, that's a stupidly low number when you think of the multi-millions that a Stephen King can push out on day one.
Well, that's where, like, I've always talked about turning that my UX of parenting. I have about 10 articles, like putting that into like a cheap little like bathroom book, like one that's supposed to be porcelain office, and just find every hot dog stand outside of a WeWork.
Yeah.
I just like 5 copies of this book, and just literally just find where the WeWorks are, talk to the bagel stands, and every all of the vendors, be like, hey, just sell 5 of these books and you can keep all them, but just to get the 10K is not that's a low number.
Yeah, well, then there's even ways to game that in the physical book counting space. So you can, in some areas, you can pre-order books to put yourself, so you can go to, a lot of authors will put a book out there and say it's coming. So let's say we're in April almost. I've got a book coming out in November. I can put it on all the platforms, so you can pre-order it on Amazon and through 5 other distribution networks. But then I can go to local bookstores and go to 15 bookstores and say, I'm going to do an author reading in November when my book comes out. Can you pre-order 200 copies so that when I come do it, they exist to sell? And the bookstore will put that order in, even though it doesn't exist. And so suddenly, before the book is released, you can have it at bestseller status with no actual, not more than 10 words actually written of your book, and really game the system. So eventually they'll build in practices to prevent that. But right now, if you really wanted to do it, it's an available avenue.
And then I just have a garage full of books that nobody wants, but it looks like I've sold a ton.
Yeah.
And a very large credit card bill for all my own books.
It's just like Herbalife, but you own it all. Or any of those multi-level, Mary Kay
on your pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Rodan and Fields.
Yeah. Indie pyramid. Sorry. No, a lot of people do very well with Mary Kay. I shouldn't say that.
So, some do, but usually you're filling your garage up with product. And there's actually a phrase for it in that segment.
In the book segment or the
in the multi-level marketing segment, there's like a term for it.
I think they call it fish.
Well, something like that. But
in fish is like U.S. slang. That's means like a target or a mark or somebody.
Yeah.
Sorry for the U.S. slang. But yeah, so what, Chris, do you think would be the indie web version of this all?
So the easy examples are things like what Jeremy's got, although it's nice that he's got PDF and Mobi and EPUB copies. And that stuff's not hard to do. Typically when you have the bulk text, and there are little tools that'll allow you to create that so you can make downloadable files. And maybe that's the easy part, is having some of those tools.
And All Is Apart does publish these books. They're not self-published, correct? I think.
That book isn't part of A List Apart, I don't think.
Oh, okay. But this is his older one. I think his newest one on service workers might be, because it has that same kind of style.
Well, and then typically A List Apart is doing stuff like that because they're actually creating physical book copies, which is a nice way to go. But it's, I don't know. There's enough kind of mini tools out there that make things like Create Space, a sucker's game to be using it.
And then that other one that I thought my friend wrote her zombie book on, I can't remember. You put it in the wiki, but that was a popular one too. I'm trying to think. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah. And there, or even Wattpad. There's a handful of those.
Wattpad, that's what I'm talking about. That's got to be where every book agent's kind of got to be trolling for the next big author series, or that's where I would be if I was looking for what's going to be the next thing in modern fantasy or sci-fi.
Well, but that's even the problem too, is I've been on that side of the entertainment industry, sifting through material, and the way most of those business are like a pyramid's set up so that material filters to the top, and then you be selective at what hits the top to represent and push out and get bigger book deals.
Yeah.
Which is how things like 50 Shades of Grey, I think, is still the best-selling book of all time after the Bible, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was big in the online space and then got a book deal. But that's, a 1 in a million shot. If I'm an author, I don't go out and think that's not my plan for getting my book out there and making money as an author.
And I think most people writing on Wattpad, that's not their plan. They might have a dream of one day being the author, but I don't think that's a motivation for being a Wattpad. I think they just they love fan fiction and they love to write.
Yep.
And that's why they're on Wattpad. And they love the network of writers doing that.
Does anybody know of platforms like NaNoWriMo that are kind of about the process of the writing? Because there's even some silo space there, I think, that...
So they have a place where you can copy and paste your books. So the idea, you don't write it on their website. The idea is that you paste it in to verify your word count.
Yeah.
So that they can just check that you've not just written the word A 50,000 times. And so they do some very basic checks, but honestly not a lot. And it's not designed for storing that. Some people do write books collaboratively in the forums. But again, they don't design it for that, and they explicitly say, don't rely on us for your copy of the book because it might disappear. Which I think is a point where keeping
that's a responsible silo.
Well, that's just it. It is it's not designed for that, and so your book could disappear if you write it there. Whereas something like Google Docs, okay, maybe that's not great, but they know it's designed for documents, so they've got like backups and things like that, all of that kind of information, which is important. So.
Yeah, their first FAQ is, you do not write NaNoWriMo or camp on NaNoWriMo sites. Use your preferred word processing program.
Yeah,
that's basically their entire. That's they don't even list like, hey, here's some good ones. It's like, you're a writer, you know, if you're probably, and that's true. If you're already finding NaNoWriMo, you have a workflow for writing.
Yeah, I mean, they partner with Literature and Latte, and so every year Literature and Latte offer an extended trial of Scrivener for all people participating in NaNoWriMo, and then if you complete it, then you get a discount on Scrivener. So they partner with them, but it's not really like recommended. I don't know how much sponsorship goes in what direction for that. I think it's all listed on their website somewhere.
What do you get out of Scrivener beneficially that you don't say with using Microsoft Word or Google Docs? What is it? What is
the ability to focus on a section this big, or to zoom out to a section this big, or to zoom out to the whole document and to be able to go like, this bit belongs here, this bit belongs here, turn it into the note card view where you've got the little summary, especially because I had a co-author for my book. Okay, and he was in Japan. So trading off between jobs and time zones and everything, figuring out who was going to be doing what was a bit tricky. So we were using the different statuses on the different sections to be like, okay, I want you to write this bit, or I'm working on this bit, or hey, I've written this bit, but it's ready for you to review now, and stuff like that, so that we knew like what we needed to do without explicitly having to comment on every single section and to write to one another and say, hey, would you mind taking a look at X? Because then you end up with this massive list of stuff to take a look at, and you forget half of it. Whereas if it's marked in Scrivener, you actually see it if it's listed somewhere in some kind of collaborative system. And so that's how we use it.
You might have to check that out for the next book, because I mean, I'm looking for that perfect workflow, and I didn't want to spend time. That was what Ian and I first decided, was like, we were wasting so much time looking for the place to write our book and not writing the book. And
the only downside of Scrivener is you can't work at the same time.
Yeah, and I was just writing plain HTML, and he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, but why? I'm like, please, come on. It's just all you got to do is put a P in the front and a P in the back, please.
Yeah, when you're like 40,000 paragraphs in.
Yeah. Well, no, then I just literally cut and pasted the raw text and brought it over to Google Docs.
Well, another option too for you, Greg, that will give you multiple access for, you know, multiple writers writing all at the same time, is to use you could use a wiki, and then have, you know, wiki pages for either chapters or sections of the book, and then done by chapter, and then do it that way for the writing and saving as you go along. And then you could use the front page of your wiki as the, you know, or if, in most wiki software will give you, here's the last 10 updates. The same way the IndieWeb Wiki just emails out, here's what changed this week. Here's an overview. Then you've got an idea.
And that's kind of what we're doing with the OER lessons with Donna in the OER networks I'm setting up, is they do all their bookmarking and drafting of their OER resources on their websites. And then when we're like, oh, that's a really cool lesson plan, or that's a really cool activity, let's move that over to the wiki. And then, but what I have to figure out is, I didn't realize, is how much of the Wikimedia add-ons and extensions don't come native with a Wikimedia install. So like, you have to add a file loader, you have to add in the rich text editor, you need to add in the so there's a lot of extension work that has to go in to get a wiki ready for, I don't want to say the word norm, a wiki ready for people who are expecting a modern writing UI. Because
I mean, Confluence is actually really good for this. It's not open. It's owned by the same people that own Jira and all that, but it is actually really good because you can watch specific pages, or you can watch an entire space, and you've got all the auto indexing, and a bunch of stuff comes as native plugins. And so, yeah, it's a question with other wiki software, how many plugins do you need, of course, to get all of that kind of stuff, because, as you say, if it doesn't have the features people are expecting, then they're not going to work with it. Like writing a P around every paragraph. There are people that just won't do it.
Well, if you were doing like an OER solution, though, a wiki may be a quick, easy way to do it, to chunk things up, and then you can have things by subsections and chapters for individual pages. But as you get closer to finishing the book, you can then concatenate all those pieces so that you have, you know, a wiki page per chapter, and then it's much easier. You can render the page and then just cut and paste the HTML and throw it into a final solution to kind of go that way.
So I put in the wiki and I put in our page. That's a link to our Google folder for the book that Jack, Ian, and I are. I tried to get Ian, but he had watched his daughter today. History. That's kind of our collection. And as you go through the chapters, you'll see like half of them are like I cut and pasted from the websites. I have to, you know, just style them all. And what I found out is, yeah, my editor's going to want the Word document anyways. In the end, like in the end, I'm going to do all this work, remember what. But when I have to send it to the publisher, I have to send in a Microsoft Word document. So it's so that's where I think Google Docs also kind of won, because that's the, you know, what the publisher wants in the end kind of is what won.
Can you stick all those together in one Word document from Google Docs, or do you have to export them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just export this one.
I'm sorry. Oh, for another project, I've been using Overleaf to
Overleaf's great.
A paper written in LaTeX, which the nice thing is if you're working in something like LaTeX, then you can it outputs the PDF, and I think you can set it up to output HTML, but I haven't done that.
Yeah.
And even if you wanted to use Markdown, you wouldn't get the exporting stuff, but you still have many of the collaborative features and sort of a shared editing space. It struck me as many of the strengths of Google Docs, but working with plain text, which was beneficial for me.
Yeah, I
use Quip for the same thing. Yeah.
Quip, yeah. The only downside is I realized that to get access to the full revision history on Overleaf is now paid, and it's something like $17 a month, which seems
that's
pretty high.
Egregious. Well, Greg and I were talking like a week ago about there's a flavor of WordPress, and it comes as a plugin, but it's really not a plugin. I think it's probably easier to think of it more as a fork of WordPress that does other things. But Pressbooks, there's a couple companies that do hosted solutions because it has a bunch of prerequisites that most WordPress sites don't require, have, or need. But Reclaim Hosting recently started adding custom hosting for it, and I think their products earmarked more towards universities who may have like 70 or 80 books that they're overseeing and maintaining. But as a product, it was $125 a month to host and hold all this data, which as a publisher, that seemed like a lot egregious to me.
Yeah, that's charge to universities who $150 a month would be a drop in a bucket to their IT budget, and they wouldn't even notice.
Yeah. Because
they don't need the book to be profitable. It's really about, like, we have 30 faculty writing books, so you can have 30 books on here. It's $150 a month. Like, and then you do the per price book. That's nothing.
Well, to me, I think some of it is geared even more towards university publishers. So if you have a relatively large press, you can have the books available online, and I think it includes a bunch of the e-commerce stuff, so that if you want to sell physical or digital copies, it's kind of dovetailed in with that as well. So it's not even just, hey, here's the book for free in a digital format, which is a little more of the IndieWeb model of, what Jeremy Keith is doing. I'm giving it all away. Here, have fun. Versus I'm an actual press, and we have to pay our editors and physical printers and cover overhead and buildings and air conditioning. And I think in part I think that's why that product is so expensive, is there's e-commerce built into it as well. But even at that's silly expensive for even an e-commerce solution.
And you can always just do what Dana Boyd did with all of her books. Is they're all published through MIT Press or Harvard Press, which she bumps between Harvard and MIT. And then just puts a PDF on her website and says, hey, it's all under Creative Commons. Here's a PDF link, but I'd really like you to buy the book too. Here's the link if you want.
Yeah.
Granted, it does help when you have a name like that. But a lot of people will, like, I assign a PDF to my students, but a lot of people will just buy the book out of support, more of like a patronage model versus when they know it's available for free, or people just love physical copies of books and they're willing to pay for that luxury, even if you give away the free book.
Yeah. Well, I know Cory Doctorow is a big proponent of that too, but I don't think I've ever gone to his website to check and see and download any of his books for free. And it's almost like he's seeding the market. A few people will read it and say, hey, I read this great book. And they won't hear how they got it or where he got it. And they'll actually go out and buy a physical copy. Or people will read the book, say, hey, this was great. I want a copy for my shelf. And then buy a physical copy that way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of built a career in doing that, giving it away for free and then selling it. But he's also following your model too, because I noticed he's showing up at the upcoming LA book fair thing, and he'll sell 500 copies that weekend, I'm sure.
And his honorarium's got to be 7 to 10K, very minimum. It's straight off the top of my guess. Unless that's the thing. Like most academic publishers, you're making nothing on your book, but you might get 7 to 10K for each speaking gig. So it's I think we have to. I think the book market needs to shift to that. It's like I hate to bring the Grateful Dead into it, but that idea of give away the music and make your money at the concerts, at the events, and at the ticket sales. And I think that's kind of we're seeing that with the music industry across the way, and we're starting to see that, I think, with the book industry. Now, William Hertling, he self-publishes all his books, correct? Or he did, and then has a publisher to go look. Because he has an indie website that he does all his books on.
He may. I want to say he follows a more traditional publishing process. I don't think you can get his
He got
books
the
for free.
Independent Publisher Award. Oh no, you can't get them for free, but he publishes them himself. But I don't think he doesn't openly license them for free. But he won last year's Independent Science Fiction Publisher Award.
His publisher is Liquid Idea Press. Let me look up and see what that actually directs to.
His online store is IndieBound.
IndieBound is a indie book distributor, kind of the way Amazon works. It's kind of a platform for indie bookstores as well.
Yeah, the Liquid Idea from the website. A nano publisher in Portland, Oregon uses print on demand.
I'm pretty sure it's just his garage. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Liquid Media is Hertling's, like, some room in his house. And he prints his books on demand. Or it's a little publisher, an on-demand publisher. Because actually, now I think about it, Lily and Aaron publish all their books under their own domain and under their own name with no publisher. And they do a print on demand. And I'm actually working to set up a fundraiser with her cat book, with my with my Cub Scout troop, where I'm going to buy like 10 copies and sell them around town and donate the money to local charities. So I'm just about to. I just convinced the guy to order 10 of them. So we're going to sell them in the store, and then any of them profits goes to that. Yeah. So Aaron and Lily, they publish all the books just from their websites, and we talk about the garage full of unread books. Yeah. You can go to Aaron's talk. You'll get a free OAuth2 book if you want.
Well, the benefit of doing that, though, is usually if you print about 2,000 copies, you get such a discount on the physical paper, because otherwise you're looking at, for hardbound,
not hardbound,
a general run-of-the-mill hardbound book is going to cost you about $11 to $12 to manufacture and ship and have in your garage.
I think I can buy in bulk at about $10.
Yeah.
Suggested retail is $19.
Yep.
So if I buy 10 copies, it was $10 a book. I think. I mean, I should probably ask her, but that was pretty close to what I remembered. Was if I bought from her wholesaler, which was basically print on demand. It was about, and they're not hardbound; they're softbound.
Yeah. But if you're Macmillan and you're publishing books and you know you're going to sell 10,000 copies, you do a 10,000 print run, and then it costs you about $250 a book.
Mm-hmm.
So even once it goes to the booksellers and sells for 30 to 40, or maybe 20, or on Amazon it sells for 16, roughly those big price points, you're fine. And then if you have to remainder the book and let Barnes and Noble sell it for $5.99 on the discount table, you're still making a tiny razor thin profit, but at least you moved the book and made 20 cents on it.
And the other model I'm seeing a lot more of is the pay as you go as you write. I know Doug Belshaw, his book on productivity, you subscribe to the book at X dollars per month, and each month you got a new chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that model more and more, which is nice because you're actually getting paid to write as you write.
Yeah. It's more like a Patreon model of writing, but hopefully you're not using Patreon to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't happy with those recent changes. But when you take VC money, you need returns. And that's where I've been. If people are wanting to talk about, and I'll do that e-commerce session later today. But I highly recommend people that, especially if you're an indie website, you need to sell something in your store. I've been absolutely loving the ease of Snipcart on static sites. It is $10 a month once you turn it on, and 2.7% of each transaction, like every transaction fee. But I've been setting up. I've done 2 businesses so far where I've been just building static sites for their stores, and then it's one line of JavaScript, and then it crawls the HTML and builds my web store. And it's so dead simple. So we'll get to that in e-commerce, but I did want to mention that in the book selling section, because I do think that's an easy way for people to integrate into adding some kind of, how do you actually buy my book? Like, without going to Patreon, without going to PayPal, without going to something. You are using a third-party company, but I kind of dig them because it's set up for static sites. So I set up the H products, and then it crawls. You put all of their metadata in your button. So it's like the book title, the price, your quantity, and they hit buy, and it launches a pop-up. But we'll show that in a later session today. But I did want to recommend that for anybody who might be thinking about, straight owning every step of the publishing.
I mean, I can also recommend WooCommerce. That's what I've got set up. And with the Stripe and PayPal integration, that works really nicely. And I have to say, because with Stripe, you can add Apple Pay. That's really useful for getting people to impulse purchase, because it's just one click and you confirm on your Apple Watch, and guess what? You give me some money. So that works pretty nicely. And yes, of course, you need to pay PayPal or Stripe, but whatever payment processor you use, they're gonna take a chunk of it because you're using their service.
And I do find when you have a shared host and you try to run a WooCommerce store, WooCommerce is very resource intensive, or I'm doing it wrong.
No, it's a big, heavy,
It can be, yeah. I mean, we have one product, but it's running on a virtual private server with everything else. So I've got a couple of other WordPress sites on there, but a bunch of static sites, and I've got a bunch of services like Compass, and all of basically everything of Aaron's is running on my server as well, except Oniogram and so on. And it's doing fine. My server is not complaining.
Wow,
So,
that's right. One product. I think we have like 37 products in this, and it's one little shared host store.
And it's always nice to say you maintain 100,000 lines of code just to sell one book, which, there's probably more code in WooCommerce than is written in your entire book.
probably, but I got the website set up and running in 30 minutes.
And
there's that.
And WooCommerce has great integration, like you said, with Stripe, with Apple Pay, with PayPal, with Swipe. And that's another thing, is like you could go to one of those, like if you have a Swipe account, your page, like I honestly think that they're going to own the business, like the Swipes, the Stripes. They're all building POS page builders, and they're going to end up owning the small business market, I think, unfortunately, in the long run. So we give everybody the independent tools to do it themselves.
I mean, Stripe is great for me because it works with my also self-hosted invoicing software. So I already had it.
I'd love to find out what you're using for that, because people are like
Invoice Ninja.
Invoice Ninja, because they're like, how do we do an receipt? I'm like, there's no such thing. You know? But I'm playing with this idea of sending a web mention receipt. So I'm actually, I fooled around with like kind of marking it up. And like, how do I take, because I mean, we have each product and we have a UN reply of. So it's basically UN reply of, you know, boom, here's your web address. You bought H product receipt. No.
You need privacy for that though.
This is more for
the private web mentions.
Yeah, publicly displaying I bought this, not like an actual receipt privacy.
Right. Yeah.
Just thinking about that. But that's the hour for this session. I think coming up next, and I think we should probably take a quick 5-minute break in between. I think it's me. I think I have to come up with something next. Does anybody have the schedule open? Dave, what's next on the schedule?
Oh, I have the other thing open. The schedule.
Critical grade books.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to shut this down, but I'll leave the feed open. Oh no, I do have to shut this down because we have to open up a new channel for each event. And if anybody is interested in we don't have any of the tools yet for us, but just brainstorming and thinking about how we can do. I don't want to say grade books because it's a lot of ungrading, but how do we create the IndieWeb feedback loop for people that are in learning spaces? That's what I'm going to be fooling around with. If nobody's coming to the session, I'll hack it on my own, but I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
Do this for us, Greg. Set the session, turn it off, start the new one, and put the link out immediately, and then I can stick it in the wiki.
All right,
and just let it run empty for whoever wants to sit in and hang out.
All right, I'll be right back.
And then you've at least got a place for people to go.
All right, makes sense. Give me 2 minutes.